What I have here is a bass or a baritone drone reed. It's a blackwood body with a styrene tongue. Styrene is a form of plastic that not a lot of reed makers have used in the Highland pipe world, but it works great for small pipes. And one of the reasons why it works so great is because it has a memory, but it also has a little bit of bounce back, so you can do different things. You can bend it, you can unbend it, or counter bend it. You can put bends in different places of the tongue depending on what you want the reed to do. Be louder, softer, shut off easily, shut off more hard, play slightly different pitches, and you've got all this flexibility in using these things. So you can see I've tied basically a binding thread here, and I've tied a bridle here out of silk, that's sea weight silk that I've waxed. And when you're moving the bridle, you can use your fingernail, to just kind of, but your fingernail is going to dull after a while, so use one of the pins to push this waxed thread down or up like that. So what I'm doing now is I'm just taking this reed out of the box. It doesn't yet work, and I'm going to sort of spring the tongue. I'm just gonna, just for illustration purposes, I'm using using this to give me a lot of room on the tongue. I'm gonna take a blade, slip it under, not really flexing or torquing the blade, just kind of reinforcing that there's gonna be a bend right there at the bridle. And let's see what happens with this thing. And we'll look at the tuner. That's pretty open. Sorry, that's pretty closed. Yeah, I'm gonna look at the tuner. So right now the reed is reading kind of sharp, and so I'd like to flatten the reed. And what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna move the bridle down, by pushing the, exposing more of the tongue, lengthening the tongue. I'm using just one of the pins to do this so that I don't, tear up the thread. And why don't I use a rubber band or, a piece of vinyl tubing or something like that? It's like everything you're gonna put around a reed is gonna change or give or, something eventually. But the silk thread is pretty good as far as being pretty rigid. So I'm gonna reinforce the bend at the tongue to make it, flatter. And let's look at the tuner here and see what it reads. It was reading like a B before. So now that's reading an A. So let's see how quickly it shuts down. Now that's a pretty strong reed. If I wanted the reed to be more open, what I could do to keep it from shutting off, but not be much flatter, because I don't necessarily want the reed to be flatter, but what I could do to make it, shut off less or be harder to shut off is I could put my finger down in the middle, and I could create a bend there in the middle of the reed. Now we'll see if that makes the reed flatter. Not much flatter, but it's gonna make the reed a lot harder to shut off, because we're basically, the pitch of the reed is from the tip of the reed to here. When we create a bend in the middle of the tongue, we're gonna make the reed harder to shut off. So it's not gonna shut off as easily, so you can put more pressure and not shut it off. But it won't have much of an effect on the pitch of the reed, because the pitch of the reed is from the tip to the bridle in this case, because we've reinforced. Now when I do this, it is gonna make the reed flatter, because it's reinforcing more and more and more the bend at the bridle. That's gonna make the reed flatter. Over time, this styrene is gonna relax, and you will see your drone pin, it tunes really far in, and as the styrene relaxes, you're gonna have your drone being pulled further and further out, and then sometimes if it relaxes completely, then the reed will stop, and at that point you need to reinforce the bend at the bridle. See how that made it so much flatter by really reinforcing that bend? You can, if the reed is too open or too flat, what you can do is you can either with your fingernail or with a drone pin, you can start choking up the bridle. You can start shortening the tongue, basically. And that is going to make the reed sharper. So it's made the reed sharper. It's made the reed easier to close down. And if you need the reed to be sharp but also very open, what you can do is you can put a bend in the tongue, in the middle of the tongue, or sort of like the first third of the tongue, kind of like that, not way back at the bridle. And let's say you do that and now your reed won't shut off. Now it's just taking up way too much air because it's got such a huge bend right here, you know, right in the middle of the blade. Then what you would need to do is you would need to counter bend the blade. You need to take this bend, this middle bend out. And you can do that with styrene, luckily, because you can take your thin blade at the tip, push down on the tip, push down here, and take that bend out, just like that. Take the bend out. You can see I'm counter bending the tongue. And that will make the reed easier to shut off. Like that. And so you can work with the bridle to make the reed sharper or flatter. You can reinforce the bend at the bridle, wherever the bridle is sitting. You can bend the middle to make the reed take more air, shut off harder, so that you can play harder and not shut off the reed if the reed is shutting off and you don't really want to change the pitch much. And if you go too far, you can counter bend the reed like that. And you can do a combination of these things and just work with the styrene, because the styrene has a memory, and it also will start relaxing. So you're sort of creating a little bit of a moving target, and it takes for the styrene to completely go to where it's going to sit. I won't say go back to where it was, but go to where it's going to be stable and not be changing. It takes about a day. So when I'm setting up a set of pipes, if I'm doing something like bending the tongue of a reed, I would wait a day, see how it's playing the next day. And for example, if my reed is stopping too easily and I've made this bend right here, then what's going to happen is the drone starts tuning in, very, like this. And then as the styrene relaxes, it tunes further and further out, further and further out. And what I hope is that it will relax to a point, but not quite as far as it was originally, because where it was originally was stopping. So it'll tune out to a point and then stop right there, and the drone reed won't stop. If the drone reed does stop, you got two choices. You can put the bend at the bridle, or you can create a second bend, more towards the tip or the middle of the reed. And that will help make the reed more open while preserving the pitch for the most part. And that's some reed basics.